Am I projecting? Is this mic on? Okay. So last year, the developer of Yara used this simple phrase or simple description of Yara. He described Yara as, Yara is to files what Snort is to network traffic. And I think that we can use this to really frame the discussion about Yara and both its limitations and its usefulness. To me, operationalizing Yara means getting the most out of the tool. So taking indicators from one medium, I assume a lot of us are defenders, and using those, operationalizing those indicators over into other mediums, whether it's from network to traffic flows to, and expanding the word file to include other network traffic flows, PCAPs, and memory dumps. Oh, and then many visualization platforms, which those are becoming more common, offer the ability to utilize Yara rules. So either on a specific file types or across all network transactions. And so using Yara to its most effectively allows us to really harness the capabilities of those tools and take one indicator from one thing and deploy it across the enterprise. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Good morning. My name is Chad Robertson. I'm a threat researcher. Yara Exchange. Who's a member of Yara Exchange? Awesome. If you're not a member of Yara Exchange and you like Yara, please check it out. I'll have a reference slide at the end. Yara Exchange is a group of researchers and folks, Yara enthusiasts. The developer of Yara is also in there that discuss Yara. It's a really great place to get help. So, and if you just Google for it, it's out there. So we're really going to talk about two things today. Only 20 minutes, pretty short. So the two things we're going to talk about, one is what I think is one of the key ideas, the key principles of Yara that really can help us write more effective and more efficient rules. And then two, we're going to go through a quick malware scenario, just a piece of malware that does some C2 traffic. Look at the C2 traffic, take artifacts from the C2 traffic, and then pivot those artifacts to the other mediums, to memory, PCAP, or memory dump file, and then also to static binary, and see how we can take them. So somebody walks up to us as an instant responder, a defender, and says, here's a PCAP, this host was infected. Do something with this, deploy it out, make the most use of this PCAP. We're going to sort of take a look at that scenario. So we have this PCAP, we know it was evil, we know there was some sort of host that was malicious, that was sourcing this traffic, and then utilizing that across different platforms. So starting with Yara atoms. So atoms are undivided substrings found in a regular expression or hex string with regard to Yara. So let's consider the hex string as shown up there. In the above string, byte sequences, and go to the next slide, these byte sequences are considered atoms. And so Yara uses these atoms when it's going to assess a file for applicability, to assess a file to determine, to scan a file, right? So the first one, the atoms are highlighted there. The most complex atom will be defined or identified, and then that atom will be used to scan a file. If that atom is present, then the rest of the rule will then be evaluated. And so having a complex atom, at least one, is a really efficient way to create a Yara signature. And so we'll look at sort of how that works. The number 1 is really great, and then over here we have 1, 2, and 3. In that case, it would use 1. And I think there's an example of that on the next slide. So here's just a file, I think 128 bytes of junk data, and then a string that matches this particular regular expression. The regular expression is here, the Yara signature is here, and the condition is just all of them. And then, of course, it finds it at hex 80. So that's how that might look. And then, so more about Yara atoms. If sometimes a single atom is not enough, in the previous example, ABC, like in the previous ABC is enough defining ABC that, but sometimes a single atom isn't enough. because in this case you have an OR. So you have a regular expression, you have ABC and EFG. Both atoms would have to be evaluated because they're, as you can see, fully evaluated to the regular expression whether one of these atoms is found. All right, so here's an atom tree. The regular expression is there at the top. Look at OR into this. So we have the and then the OR Boolean. In the regular expression, look at into this, Yara can search for look, or search for this, or search for both at and into. So which is optimal? So what's an optimal string, an optimal atom to use for Yara to get the most efficient rule? The top one's a very poor atom because the quality of atom depends on some characteristics of the atom, including its length, number of zeros, and the number of unique distinct bytes. Atom 00 is very low quality because it's only 2 bytes long and both bytes are zeros. Atom 01010101 is better, but still not optimal. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 would be an optimal atom. That's everything I just said. The worst strings are those that contain no atoms at all. So the regular expression digit followed by something followed by digit would be very poor because there's no atom for Yara to identify to then scan around, to look around to find if the string matches. And then the bottom one there is also a poor atom. So if you have a regular expression, the takeaway from this is if you're writing a Yara rule, try to find something to anchor the string against. Pure regular expressions are slow. Fastest. So Yara offers keywords, ASCII only, wide, as well as no case. The top 3 examples are fast because there's only 1 atom generated for each one. The next 2 are a little slower because not slower, it's still fast. 2 atoms are generated because you're doing ASCII and wide. And then the third is slow. And this is an interesting case. We never using the no case. And in the past, at times, I'd used no case kind of as a default because I thought, well, that seems like a good idea. It turns out that no case capitalizes each character in the string and then uses that as it capitalizes just so many atoms are generated because each character is capitalized and that becomes an atom across the length of the string with a no case operator. Which, I mean, is valuable, right, in some cases. But if we can avoid that, it would be faster. Network indicators. So this is the malware portion. This is just a screenshot of a PCAP, and so this is just a bunch of junk. And this is C2 traffic. At the top, we can see something interesting. If we looked across multiple client requests, we would start to see that there's actually commonalities. I've highlighted the commonalities. The 0807 is interesting, but we'll talk about that in a little while. The other string, the 8-byte string noted there at the bottom, is the most interesting, and so I put that at the bottom because we're going to refer back to it many times as a sort of anchor to pivot. So we've talked about the Yara atoms, and now this is number 2. Number 2 being how we can take malware or a specific indicator, a PCAP, and deploy that across multiple platforms. So that string will be referred to multiple times. The top there, we can see that, so we wrote a rule. Here's a rule using that string. The string is over there again. And we're just running that against multiple PCAPs. These are 4 PCAPs that have multiple hits, which the multiple hits is sometimes could be multiple requests or it could be multiple functionality. It could not only be the initial C2, but it could be additional request. It could be additional communication, not only the initial beacon, but other things that are going on, right? So in each one of these PCAPs, there's an interesting number of occurrences of that string. So we're taking so we still have that same string. We found the same string that's interesting, and that's consistent across multiple samples, or multiple PCAPs, which is great. Now we can go a little bit further, and this is just really showing an additional condition that we can do. I like to whenever I write a Yara rule, I try to do 3 points of detection because to eliminate false positives or lower the number of false positives. And in this case, there are 3 points of detection. The string itself, the static string, is one. The length of the string would be another. And then the length of the file size. In this case, as we saw back there on that, wrong way. On this example, it's a very small file. So we can so if we capture the file size, we capture the length of the string, and capture the content of the string, we can come up with a really great precise rule, which is shown over there on the right. The thing about that is, unless we're looking at flows, so there's the flows, and you can use you're probably aware, there's a TCP flow tool that's on that you can get that'll extract the flows from a PCAP. So we're scanning the PCAPs, they match the demo rule, we can scan the flows, and we have lots of different flows inside those PCAPs that match the demo Yara. Because the additional conditions, I mean, the PCAP is too large, so it's not going to fit those conditions anymore. But if we do have, back to the network visualization platform, if there's some sort of tool that you have that visualizes those as unique, the streams or the sessions uniquely, then we could leverage something like that to be more precise across the different PCAPs. Okay, so we have our Yara rule that we can detect network traffic. Awesome. Now, how can we do that? How can we take that and detect static binaries? Just a screenshot of Immunity. This is an example of this particular type of malware. It's you can see at the bottom, there's in the memory is that string, which I don't have it over there anymore. But so there's the Windows function, WSA send, the winsock function is being passed. This buffer is going out to is being sent. The string there is at the bottom, which is great. So where does that data come from? So it gets in a buffer. Where does it come from? And this is sort of an ideal situation. There's no obfuscation in this particular malware. So it's because it's static, it makes it a little bit easier to see. So this is obviously is ideal. There's no packing. There's no obfuscation. There's no. So anyway, we can take a closer look at that. There's the string that we were looking at before. It's in memory. Awesome. So where's it coming from? Here's a shot of IDA. So looking at this sample in IDA, we can see that those strings are static within the binary. So again, B1, 1C, 6C, B1, and then the opcodes to the left. So which is really cool and useful to us. We can see the 0807 is up there too, which we'll get to that I think on a couple more slides. But those strings are consistent, and if we wildcard out the opcodes that are associated with those strings, we should be able to detect multiple variants of this malware. And let's see if it works. So there's the rule, there's the strings, there's the wildcards, and have 26 matches. So now we've taken a single PCAP, we've identified C2 traffic within a PCAP. Now we've taken that intelligence and written an additional detection. We've found that string in the static binary. Now we've written an additional detection, a static detection, and now we have a whole bunch more samples. And if we look at these samples, there's something interesting. We won't dig too much into reversing or the analysis side, but if you look at the different functions that contain those strings, there are different control characters or sort of operators that are happening there at the first. So it's either 0807, 0A01, or 0A07. So those 2 bytes will prefix the other string, the static string, in the C2 communication. And so and those exist in different functions. So it's probably related to different functionality within a malware. And still we're still starting with this single string that we found in the PCAP. Memory side. So now we've taken the PCAP, we've found the string, we've used the string to find a whole bunch more malware in the static side. Now if we have a host-based platform, or if we want to use volatility, or dump it or something to get memory out, and we're doing volatility analysis, and we're like, oh, let's write a Yara for that tool too. We can do the same thing. So we still have the same string, and because the binary is being written in memory, and then it's doing it's writing the buffer of that it's sending out across the wire to memory. Both of those are present there as well. Here is the string, the non-wildcarded. So this would be the network side. There's the rule. So there we can see the network rule that we wrote previously applies to the memory. And then the static rule with the wildcarded opcodes applies to the static detection in the same memory. Get a lap full of water, excuse me. Is that it? Yeah, so that's really it. There's a couple more slides after this, but so we've looked at how we can write more efficient rules by by understanding Yara atoms and applying that understanding to writing rules and how Yara assesses a string. And then secondarily, we did the malware. We looked at malware, looked at the piece of malware. We took the PCAP, and we now have multiple signatures that we can deploy across the enterprise from a single PCAP to operationalize those artifacts, those indicators. And I just wanted to highlight real quick here at the end the modules that are in Yara 3.3. The PE module is really awesome. It offers a lot of new functionality and really powerful functionality. The Cuckoo module, if supported, allows detection for external, like outgoing network traffic. So URLs or those kind of things, we can write Yara expressions against those. The magic module, the hash module, and the math module. If you haven't played with these yet, they're really cool and they're really useful. So I encourage you to take a look at those. And then Florian Roth wrote a tool called YaraGen. And it's really helpful. It comes with a database of good strings, and so that's one of the strongest, or one of the difficult things about writing Yara detections is not, especially if you have compiler artifacts or .NET artifacts or whatever artifacts you have in an executable. If you try to take a large set of data and automatically create Yara signatures for all those files. A lot of times you'll get the good strings. So this comes with the good strings database to eliminate that sort of generic detection and help avoid false positives. It's if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's really cool and useful. And these are the references. The Yara Exchange is the group that I mentioned at the beginning. If you're not a member of it, check it out. It's really helpful. It's really active. The folks there, there's a lot of exchanging of ideas and rules, and there's a repository for rules. So if you want to grab a bunch of rules and kind of understand how other people do it, there's a lot of really sort of advanced points that are discussed there. So a lot of for loops and conditionals, which I think are really helpful in understanding how you can do some really cool iterating over strings and such and that kind of thing. There's discussions about that. And then these are just the MD5s, and we can, I think this will be shared. But MD5s of these particular malware, if you want to play this malware or sort of follow along some of these samples that detected with this series of analysis. I think that's it. Let's see. Yeah, so any questions? We have some time, so we can chat. If you want to talk about Yara, talk about. Yes, sir.
What's the false positive rate when you're going with the method you said, or you're going for the repeating strings?
Mm-hmm.
What's your false positive rate?
On a particular platform, or just in general?
In general.
In general, I think the most feedback. The closer, the more static, the longer and the more static the strings are, the less false positives. And of course, there are cases where there's a string that's common across multiple binaries that we would want to avoid. But in this case, when you have a very specific, especially it's a protocol header, so this is just straight up TCP. In this particular case, it's not. There's no HTTP headers. There's no FTP stuff. So if you just have straight bytes going to a port, and if you can somehow leverage a tool to look at that in that way, where you're not, and if you can, thereby you're eliminating all the HTTP and you're eliminating all the known stuff. You're looking at this odd traffic that doesn't match anything else that whatever platform you're using sees. and then you're also looking for this very static string, then in that case it would be very low false positives. So I guess it really depends on just how focused you can apply the rule. If you put this up on VT, you might have different results, but the overall that would be the I think you would if you start adding wildcards in as well, that would be another increased way to increase false positives. But when you have really static strings, and especially if you start doing wildcarding opcodes or looking at more parts of the function, if you're doing static detection, and if you add in different sections of the static binary, that would help decrease false positives too. 1 minute? 1 minute. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like you're saying the half of this victory is simply choosing target-rich environments.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like you're saying that part of the victory lies in picking target-rich environments and not going for stuff that is unlikely to happen, like HTTP headers and file transfers that are going to generate random strings.
Yeah, and I guess that's really the why you would want to limit the file size to 32 meg or 32 or the length to 11 back on the other on those other slides. If you do that within your Yara expression, then you're going to eliminate a ton of that stuff because all those protocols have a lot of overhead. So just by doing that alone, just by doing that alone, you've eliminated a lot of targets. To avoid the target-rich environment, you've really sort of focused on what you're looking at, and so the more you can do that, the more you're going to avoid false positives. Okay, thank you very much.